You've all heard me talk about My Pillow and Mike Lindell and how his pillows have literally changed my life. Go to mypillow.com and click on the radio listener square. There you'll find deep discounts on all My Pillow products, including the Giza Dream bed sheets. Don't forget to use the promo code Carter. Hey everyone, today's podcast is brought to you by AMAC. AMAC offers an alternative to just about every benefit that AARP offers, but without the liberal agenda. Remember that, without the liberal agenda. Go to amac.us/Carter and join today. Today, it's such an important show because it's not something that I want to say all the time. This time, I really, truly believe we have to focus on some topics that I think ultimately could affect the great country that we love, our republic, and what's been happening over the last year are definite signs that we are going in the wrong direction. I'm actually very nervous, very worried. I'll bring in some of the, my personal experience traveling overseas and dealing with the media overseas and dealing with intelligence agencies overseas, particularly stories I covered in Afghanistan and Pakistan and Iraq. I'll talk to you a little bit about my time in Saudi Arabia. I also have a very special guest on this show today. It's Roger Stone. I think it's vitally important that we speak to him. He was commuted. His sentence was commuted by President Trump, obviously to the chagrin of the left that wanted to destroy everybody around President Trump. They did not have that opportunity because President Trump obviously stepped in. He did the same for Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. But I really want to talk to Roger Stone because what happened to Roger as well was such a travesty. I mean, I don't know if I want to take you back to that moment where they raided his home, where the FBI came with guns blazing, right? I mean, fully armed, like an armada, came to his house in the early morning hours, and lo and behold, guess who was there 15 minutes before the FBI? CNN. CNN was at his house. Why do you think CNN was there? Do you think it's because they're like best friends with the DOJ or the people that were on, the special counsel? CNN was there. CNN was there because they wanted those people that targeted President Trump, that being the former Obama administration officials, including Andrew Weissmann. Remember that name because Roger's going to be talking about big news breaking on the show about Andrew Weissmann, who was basically Robert Mueller's pit bull, his right-hand guy, right? During the special counsel. They wanted to send a message. They wanted to send a message to everyone around President Trump, including people that were writing about President Trump like me and others. They wanted to send a message that they were in charge, that they were watching every single one of us, and that it didn't even matter that the American public elected President Trump to office, that didn't even matter at all, that they were the ones in charge and they were going to make sure that would never happen again. They wanted to threaten everyone around President Trump. They spied on people around President Trump. Look at what they did to Carter Page. They violated the Constitution. They trampled it, and they didn't even care because the ends to them justified the means. That's what they cared about. They cared about getting President Trump out of office. And what we are seeing transpire on the November 3rd election, and all of these alleged, I'm saying alleged, YouTube, I'm still allowed to talk, right? Because YouTube right now wants to take down any videos and anything that remotely contradicts the outcome of the election being, President-elect Biden. This is what we are dealing with today. We are dealing with a society that is completely different than what we understood and knew America to be just a decade ago. We now live in a country where fundamentally, we are being watched. I'm scared. I'm working on my stories. I'm like, did I put something in there that Twitter is going to try to tag and remove and put warnings out about me? Is Facebook going to hamper my ability to tell the story? I feel like I'm living in, Russia, Soviet Russia, by the way. in the old Soviet Union. I feel like I live in China, right now. Oh, by the way, Facebook actually has H-1B employees that hold the visa, the H-1B visas here in the United States that are fact checkers from China. How about that? You know, they know, right? They know how to censor. They're from China. I want to tell you a little bit about that too. I mean, I feel very frustrated. I heard, Rush Limbaugh, God love him, I mean, he's never afraid to take one step as far as possible and let people know how he's feeling. And I got to tell you, it's the way I feel when I'm talking to folks. They're talking about secession. Are some states going to secede? What's going to happen? What's going to happen to our country in the future? Are we so divided, Democrats versus Republicans, that we can never find that middle ground again? Rush Limbaugh was talking about this. It's something to think about. We have 17 states now that joined with Texas to take what they believe was election irregularities and fundamentally an unfair, what they suggest, unfair election, general election, to the Supreme Court. They are going to do this. That's a lot of states, right? But then you have a media that doesn't want to do anything. The media doesn't want to cover this. The media doesn't want to tell the American people the truth. And I'll tell you that in a minute. I'll tell you about that in a minute when we talk about Hunter Biden. This is the reason why. This is the reason why Roger Stone is on this show, because he was trashed in the media, completely, publicly trashed by the FBI, by people on the special counsel, by former members of the Obama administration, which, by the way, are going to be coming back. We've already seen the outline, the Biden-Harris administration. Susan Rice is on the list. Dennis McDonough is on the list. I can't wait to see John Brennan, what role he's going to have. All these people, so many people that unmasked Americans, that violated the law, that trampled on the Constitution, they are sitting back. No wonder. They just sat back laughing. It makes me wonder who inside the DOJ actually had they already knew. It was already set up, because William Barr never did anything. William Barr? What has William Barr done? What has William Barr done but talk? Jeff Sessions never did anything. What did he do but talk? John Durham? Where's that famous report we're supposed to see? We don't even have that. And then we've got Congressman Swalwell from California. And the new information right now that came out and broke this week, that, he had a relationship with Fei Fang from China, who happens to be a spy. And not only did he have a relationship with this woman early on, but, her and the people connected to her helped move him, from his local job in the city council all the way to Congress. He sits on the House Intelligence Committee, folks. Right there, they have access to the most classified information our intelligence community has. Our intelligence apparatus shares information with members of the House Intelligence Committee that no other congressman can look at. They have that ability to see that classified information. I want you to think about what it takes to be in the CIA. I covered intelligence for a long time. I covered the intelligence community. I know what it's like. When I traveled to Pakistan and I'm on the ground and I have a hotel, which I know the Pakistani ISI, that's their Inter-Services Intelligence Agency, probably already has set up to spy on me because I'm an American reporter. I already know these things. I'm a journalist. I know that when I'm overseas on my cell phone, even in a war zone in Afghanistan, that my cell phone is not only being monitored by Americans, but my cell phone is being monitored by Iranians, by Saudis, by Jordanians, by Russians, by whoever is on the ground. That is a global world, right? And it's a war zone. And people are picking up intelligence all the time, and they're building dossiers on people. Well, here you have Eric Swalwell just kind of like gallivanting around. By the way, Nancy Pelosi found out about it. Sure, he was briefed by the FBI later on, realized that he had been the target of a spy ring from China, and he's not the only one. He's not the only one. I want you to think about that. Think about the man that was working for Senator Dianne Feinstein. Senator Feinstein had a Chinese spy allegedly in her office. Think about all the people that were in contact with these people. And now think about how many more spies are out there. But I want you to hear what Swalwell says when this is out now it's public. How does he explain himself? Listen to this clip of Swalwell criticizing President Trump's administration's policy on China, and then how Swalwell responds to that report.
I'm very concerned, though, that today the president's administration put out a statement that you have China and Russia and Iran, and they're all interfering, and gave this false equivalence to them. And Nicole, this would be like if a meteorologist saw that there was going to be snowflakes in the Rockies, a lightning storm in the Midwest, and a Category 5 hurricane to hit the East Coast, and just put out an alert that there's going to be a weather event this weekend. That is the equivalent of what they have done, I think, to politically protect the president.
To politically protect the president, all the while he knew he had been the target of a Chinese spy. All the while he knew, so did Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff and I'm sure others knew that he had been a target of the Chinese, and he was sitting on the House Intelligence Committee. But he spread rumors and lies about President Trump. Remember, he's one of the first people to go after President Trump and nonstop, along with Adam Schiff. These guys are exactly the hypocrites that we made them out to be last year. Now I want you to hear Swalwell respond to the report, which was originally broken by Axios. Axios broke the fact that Swalwell had this relationship with this Chinese spy. I want you to hear how he responds to it. This is with CNN.
Did you have any concerns about this person before you had what's known as a defensive briefing from the FBI to make you aware of this threat?
No, Jim, I was shocked when, just over 6 years ago, I was told about this individual, and then I offered to help, and I did help. And I was thanked by the FBI for my help, and that person is no longer in the country. And I was a little surprised to read about my cooperation in that story, because the story says that, there was never a suspicion of wrongdoing on my part, and all I did was cooperate. And the FBI said that yesterday. But the wrongdoing here, Jim, is that at the same time this story was being leaked out is the time that I was working on impeachment on the House Intelligence and Judiciary Committees. And if this is a country where people who criticize the president are going to have law enforcement information weaponized against them, that's not a country that any of us want to live in. And I hope it is investigated as to who leaked this information.
So he gets exposed, right? They're all exposed now, Nancy Pelosi and everyone. He should not be sitting on the House Intelligence Committee. That was just the tip of the iceberg. Believe me, we don't know the half of it, the half of what has happened between Swalwell. What about, if he was really in a serious relationship with this woman, or even if he was just very close friends with her, what did she get access to? Why did he have to cooperate with the FBI? It wasn't like he found out she was a spy. It's like the FBI had to come to him. So, of course, he had to cooperate with the FBI. He had no other choice, right? He had no other choice. That's if the FBI comes to me and says, hey, you know what? That Russian you were hanging out with actually works for, the FSB, which is Russia's, KGB, former like Soviet Union's KGB, like our CIA, right? Or the Russian GRU. You would have to cooperate because you'd be like, oh, whoa, wait a minute. But when you are a lawmaker, you have been briefed on all of this. You know when you are being targeted. People know. Look, I know. I've had experiences where people have come up to me, foreign people have come up to me and offered me information, said, oh, I've got this great story, or, oh, I have this, or I have that. And I'm always like, wow, if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true, right? And I don't operate that way. I mean, it has to be factually based. And by the way, it has to be supported by United States intelligence. I'm not just buying what everyone's dishing out, particularly if it deals with a foreign adversary and if it deals with of political players. I'm not Christopher Steele. Remember Christopher Steele? He was the foreign British spy, right? Who worked for MI6, who took money from Fusion GPS that was paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee to basically get information from former Russian spies, lies, by the way, you guys, a lot of which he made up. I've already talked about that. A lot of that information in his dossier, he just made up. And other stuff was just from spies. It wasn't even real. If you went through it, you would find holes all over the place in that. But who are the people that used it? The Democrats and the media. And the media, because none of this would be possible without the media. None of it. Look at what the media did. CNN, Washington Post, the New York Times, Reuters, the Boston Globe, everybody, AP, people were eating this stuff up. They were spreading malicious lies to the American public and to the world about our president of the United States, which, by the way, was every single person that voted for President Trump, which, by the way, in 2020 was nearly 74 million people, right? More than any other Republican president in the history of this country, right? Maybe more than any other president. We don't even know, because we don't know what's going on, because nobody is doing their job. But we are being threatened. The media is constantly making that very aware that we are being threatened. Anybody who goes against the narrative, anybody who goes against what the media is pushing out there, which means what the Democrats are pushing. We are supposed to just believe it. We're supposed to swallow that pill and move on. Do not look back. Do not collect 200. Just keep on moving. Keep on moving. We are not supposed to ask questions. We're not supposed to ask questions about COVID. We're not supposed to ask questions about the election. If any of us asks any questions, doesn't even matter. Doesn't even matter what it's about. Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, President Trump. We ask any questions. We are conspiracy theorists. That's it. You're ostracized. You're not a part of the team. You're not a team player. Well, guess what? Our job, my job as a journalist, is not to be a team player. I was never a team player. I would go overseas. I would go to Afghanistan. I would go on the ground. I would interview the soldiers. I would ask them, what's it like here? How do you feel? What's happening? They would tell me their stories. That was the stories that I'd publish. Those were the stories, not what the Pentagon wanted me to publish, not what the Pentagon said, we're winning in Afghanistan. Do you know how many times I heard that damn line? All the time. We are winning in Afghanistan. We are so close, so close. How many years have we been there? Yeah, exactly. But I would go on the ground to the front lines with our soldiers, the ones that were willing to give up their life for their country. And they would say, look, ma'am, I love that, ma'am. Look, ma'am, I don't know whether I should be building a school or fighting the enemy. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Or, ma'am, I've been on stopgap. This is my 7th rotation into Afghanistan. I'm sick of this place. I want to go home. I'm sick of it. Those were the stories that I brought back. That is what our job is supposed to be. We are supposed to be the voice for the voiceless. We are supposed to tell people the truth as best as we can. You know why I changed? I shifted. I changed so much, so much. And I know Roger's waiting for me, but I want to finish this up really quick. I always believe, from the time I was at the Daily Bulletin, covering the stories on the drug cartels, covering social justice issues inside my community in California, especially when I dealt with gangs and young people, all the way from immigration to being the Pentagon correspondent for the Washington Times and covering the war, and then freelancing my work with USA Today, Arutz Sheva, and all these other news agencies. Every time I wrote a story or every time I did a documentary, and at the Blaze too, I did it because I wanted to tell these stories. I wanted to inform the American public. From Ramos and Compeán, many of you will remember that, the 2 Border Patrol agents, to how many times the Mexican military incurred in the United States assisting the drug cartels, anything, the DEA, our soldiers, the ones who died, the ones who came back home wounded, the ones who are living with scars mentally. All of these stories to our president of the United States, President Donald Trump, who was cornered at every move he made in that White House. Not 1 ounce of help, not 1 ounce of unity ever. From the moment he was elected, it was a war against him. And now the left is sitting there wanting us to kumbaya with them while they're trampling all over our rights, while they're trampling all over us. That's why I go back to Rush Limbaugh and what we were talking about right at the beginning of this podcast. Has it gone too far? We need to think about that. We need to think about the direction our nation has taken. And we need to think about ourselves, because remember, we're in charge here. We're supposed to be. That's what our founding fathers did. They established a nation where the people were supposed to be in charge. Now we have to ask ourselves, have we lost control of that? Or do we just want to give it up? Do we care enough about our Constitution and our Bill of Rights and our nation and all of those who fought for it and all of those who have died and given so much for this country? Do we care enough about this country to continue to fight for her? Before we get to Roger, I know it's winter and I want to tell you about something that I have discovered that I think is absolutely incredible. It's actually heat holders. I've gotten these gifts for my family. Heat holders makes the most amazing mittens, hats, socks, blankets. I mean, they keep your family warm, and they're for everybody in your family. Trust me, from your youngest to your oldest, you won't be disappointed. Heat holders are available in sizes for men, women, and kids. They also make those hats, gloves, throws, scarves, and so much more. Give someone you love heat holders for the holidays or treat yourself. Go to heatholders.com and enter the code Carter, that's CARTER, at checkout to save 15% off your order. Receive free shipping with any purchase of $25 or more. There is no need for icy cold feet this winter. Just go to heatholders.com and use the code Carter. That's heatholders.com. Roger, thank you so much for being patient. I'm so happy to have you on the show today. God bless you. You have been through so much. It's been a really, really tough year for so many people, particularly you. So thank you for being here.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, Sarah, and I've got a lot of things to talk about. Incredibly, there are still developments in my legal case. As you know, the president back in July, because he correctly believed I did not get a fair trial on the basis of misconduct by the judge, gross misconduct by the jury forewoman, the questionable composition of the jury, substantial prosecutorial misconduct, very similar to what we saw in the Flynn case, and the government wanted to send me to a COVID-infested prison at age 68, contrary to all their own regulations, all their own rules, all legal precedents, and so on. I was facing a death.
Roger, they were targeting you and everyone around the president. I said earlier in the podcast when we opened up and I was telling everybody you were going to be on with us today, I was talking about that. This was a message. This was a direct message to anyone around President Trump that anybody who messed with him or with the government was going to be taken down. Do you believe that?
I absolutely do. So as you recall, the president commuted my sentence literally days before I was ordered to voluntarily report to a dank prison in Georgia, where the government was denying there were any COVID cases, but the prison guards union for that prison insisted there were hundreds of cases that were being suppressed. By the way, the union turned out to be right. Mm-hmm. Even the DOJ and the Bureau of Prisons now say there are 200 cases at that prison. So the president stepped in with an extraordinarily courageous act of both mercy and justice, and he commuted my sentence. He did not pardon me because I had hoped to appeal. The case against me was so fabricated by Mueller's dirty cops, specifically Andrew Weissmann, who we'll talk about in a second.
Because that's big news. That's why I brought you, because I'm telling you folks, you got to hear this. You got to hear Roger, because Roger is going to be breaking news right here on the Sara Carter Show. Go ahead, Roger.
I had hoped to appeal to the Circuit Court of D.C. because I think that I was railroaded. I think I have a strong case. I think the judge made a number of unconstitutional pretrial rulings. I think that there were many grounds, particularly the misconduct of the jury forewoman who was attacking Roger Stone and Donald Trump on Twitter and Facebook in 29, had those postings on a private setting during jury selection and the trial, and deleted them afterwards. Mm-hmm. You can understand that. That's jury bias. She called.
Yeah, but nothing was done even when that was exposed.
No, she called herself a member of the resistance on these blocked postings. But the judge ruled that none of that constituted.
Roger, I just want to ask you this question because you've been around a long time. You understand Washington to some extent. Have you ever seen America, Washington, ever behave in this way? I mean, it's so far to the left now. There's so little control with the bureaucracy. I mean, we've seen snakes in the grass in the past, but nothing like we're seeing now, right? I mean, the power in the bureaucracy is beyond anyone's imagination.
Since the worst misconduct by J. Edgar Hoover, who, for no question whatsoever, used political intelligence for blackmail on members of both parties for a 40-year period and got away with it, there has never been anything as corrupt as that until now. Our government has, you can call them the deep state, you can call them the military-industrial complex, you can call them the political establishment. It includes both Republicans and Democrats. These are the neocons. These are people who like the status quo. These are the people who decided to let our most important medicines be made in China. Medicines that save lives that are required to be made solely in China. Those people. So, and Donald Trump challenges their orthodoxy. This is all decided. The Republican nomination is going to be Jeb Bush, and the Democrat's going to be Hillary Clinton. And no matter who wins, our troops are staying in Syria, our troops are staying in Afghanistan, our troops are staying in Iraq. We are going to continue to spend and tax ourselves into oblivion. And along comes this improbable, audacious, brass-balled billionaire from New York who loves America, and he says, stop. I don't like what's happening to this country.
And he doesn't know anybody anything. He doesn't know anyone anything. He doesn't care.
And he has the greatest lifestyle in the world. If you've seen his palatial home in Palm Beach, if you have seen his apartment in New York, if you've seen his golf courses, this is a guy who would rather spend time with his grandchildren or playing golf or working in the office. He didn't need to be president. He ran because he didn't like seeing what was happening to the country. So the establishment has gone all out to destroy him. I was a victim in this witch hunt. It's extraordinary because many, many, many people missed this. But on election day, this past election day, at midnight, the Department of Justice finally released the handful of redacted sections regarding the Mueller report regarding Roger Stone. What did it prove? It said that they never had any evidence whatsoever against me regarding collusion or collaboration or coordination with WikiLeaks or the Trump campaign or the Russians. And it said, even if I had done so, had I received hacked material but not been in on the hack, it would not have been illegal. It would have been within my First Amendment rights. And it was questionable that even if you were involved in the hack, it may have been legal. So there was no crime and there was no evidence.
But that's why they went after you on the most ridiculous of charges.
No, that's exactly right. But the point, of course, is they built the idea that I lied to Congress about WikiLeaks when they had redacted that I knew nothing particularly about WikiLeaks.
Well, they had no problem spreading lies and rumors and disinformation. They had no problem with that.
And that's exactly the point. The New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, the so-called blue chip media in this country reported falsely over and over again that I was the missing link between the Trump campaign and Russia, the Trump campaign and WikiLeaks, the Trump campaign and Assange. Then you have their low-grade cousins like Huffington Post, Vox, Vice, Raw Story, which ought to be called Raw Garbage. They don't even pretend to be journalists. They just recycle lies purposely. Yet when I am, I'll use BuzzFeed's word, when BuzzFeed, who filed the lawsuit that required this midnight disclosure by DOJ, when they say I am vindicated, that's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, it is extraordinary. But you're not. It's not over. It's not over.
It's not over. And the irony here is that 3 days after I was the president, thank God, commuted my sentence, Andrew Weissmann, the number 2 man in the Mueller investigation, the de facto head of the Mueller investigation, a man with a long history of ethical problems and prosecutorial misconduct, a man who withheld evidence in the Enron case, causing essentially the collapse of his convictions, a man who lied about mob informants, which caused the rejection of guilty pleas by a series of the Genovese mob family, a man who was caught destroying evidence in the Durham investigation when his own criminal acts were under investigation because the Durham investigation was ongoing. He wiped multiple cell phones and admits it. A man who has openly suggested that those currently working at Justice...
What, are you saying he didn't forget his password? Are you trying to suggest that Andrew Weissmann couldn't remember his password there, Roger?
Precisely what I'm going to say, but let's get to the kicker. 3 days after my commutation, when Weissmann writes in the New York Times that I should be prosecuted to find out, been taken before a grand jury to find out what I know. But Weissmann knows that they had 2 years to call me to the grand jury. They didn't. They had 2 years to have me interviewed by the FBI. They didn't. They chose to build their case against me in secret as a terror tactic. But beyond that, Mr. Weissmann wrote the report which said that they had no evidence against me that was redacted until last week. Therefore, what evidence is it that he wishes to indict me?
Well, let me read to you from a little paragraph here from his report in the New York Times, his opinion piece. And I want you to respond to it. In spite of the president's commutation, prosecutors can seek to discover the answer by calling Mr. Stone before a grand jury. Grand juries are used every day all across the country at the federal and state levels to investigate potential criminal matters. Mr. Stone's criminal conviction resulted from his testimony under oath in the fall of 2017 before a Republican-controlled committee in Congress. I want to stop right there, and I want to remind all of you out there who are listening to this interview right now with Roger Stone and I. James Clapper lied precipitously before Congress and continuously. John Brennan has lied before. I can keep going on and on and on. Never, ever. Their mountain of lies about whether or not they spied on Americans, whether or not they collected information. I mean, really egregious acts that violated the Constitution. And the lies, never, ever were they prosecuted or brought before a grand jury. You have to ask yourself, why, Roger, is Andrew Weissmann so intent on targeting you that he would go as far as to write this opinion piece in the New York Times?
First, let me say there's 3 pieces of this that are important. We can still find out. Find out what, Andrew? What is it you want to find out? There is nothing to find out. You badgered 39 of my associates, friends, and family members in front of grand jury. You gave me a proctological examination of my finances, my taxes, my political activities, the legalities of my political activities, my personal life, my family life, and every other aspect of my life. You spent millions and you found nothing. So let's go back to your line. To find what? You want to bring me to the grand jury? You should go to the grand jury to explain why you wiped those cell phones and why you felt that was legal. But let's put that aside. Mr. Weissmann is the man who tipped CNN to my arrest on January 25th, 2019. And I can prove this. That is a felony, by the way. Mr. Weissmann, let's back up. I was arrested, as I think most people know.
Right. And explain the time frame here. Explain how you know. Explain the time frame. I've already told people CNN arrived like 14 to 15 minutes before the FBI actually knocked on your door with their weapons, by the way. So go ahead and explain.
It was a very surrealistic, almost Kafkaesque experience. But basically 29 heavily armed FBI agents in full SWAT gear, wearing their night goggles and brandishing AK-47s, surrounded my house, my home in Fort Lauderdale at 5 o'clock in the morning. They essentially surrounded the house in order to cover every exit. They arrived in 17 armored vehicles with their lights flashing. They also arrived in 2 amphibious boats, FBI boats that pulled up to the dock behind my house because I lived on the canal area in Fort Lauderdale, whereas a bunch of frogmen jumped out who were also carrying weapons. I guess they assumed I was going to try to escape by swimming. By the way, I can't swim. In any event, they pounded on the door. But because a CNN reporter had called me the day before asking for my home address, saying she wanted to mail me something, I had deduced that they were likely coming. So I'd set my alarm for 5 a.m. I'd taken a shower. I'd put on my Roger Stone Did Nothing Wrong t-shirt. You can get yours at fightback.store right now if you wish. Help pay for my legal defense, which is ongoing. And I was essentially, they pounded on the door. I opened the door looking down the barrel of multiple guns. They said, "Are you Roger Stone?" I said, "I am." They said, "Please step outside. We have a warrant for your arrest, and we have a warrant to search these premises." Second felony. So I was kind of frog marched out to the front of the street. They went upstairs. They brought my wife out at gunpoint in her night clothes. She was made to stand 10 feet away from me. They took away both of our cell phones. I said to the FBI officer, by the way, the FBI officers were courteous and professional in every way. And about of the 29 agents, other than the 4 from Washington, every other one of them either looked at me and rolled their eyes or made some other gesture to let me know they thought this was bullshit.
No, I think that's exactly how federal officers would act. I mean, I don't want to think like every single officer that showed up to your house that day was in on it with Andrew Weissmann. They were directed. Now, and explain how you know.
I was arrested at exactly 6:05.
Right.
The people at CNN knew of my arrest before my own attorneys. In fact, my lead attorney, Grant Smith, learned of my arrest when a Sara Murray from CNN called him and told him that I had been arrested. And my attorney, of course, said, "Arrested for what?" And she said, "Well, I will email you the indictment this moment." And she sent him a copy of my indictment. But my indictment was not unsealed until 9:30 in the morning by a federal magistrate, meaning that the document that she had, which had no timestamps on it, had been leaked. And if one looks at the meta tags on that document, they are those of Andrew Weissmann. They are his full 3 initials. Ergo, CNN learned of my indictment and my arrest and the execution of the warrant, all in this document from Mr. Weissmann. Now, for the beginning, from the time this happened, Senator Lindsey Graham demanded to know who approved this raid, who in the FBI. Who indeed, Sarah? We know who leaked the raid to CNN. Now, later, when I was able to look at the security camera footage, because the FBI had, in their incompetence in this case, taken the wrong disc, I could see that CNN and their camera crew showed up exactly 14 minutes before the FBI I also saw banter between a uniformed officer and the head cameraman several times. Yet all other media were blocked from the area about almost a quarter of a mile down the street. They had blocked off the street. The FBI had told it had gone to every house on the dead-end street in which I lived and told people to please stay in their homes. It was a dangerous situation. Yet CNN was allowed to film my arrest. I frankly think they overplayed their hand badly.
Roger, this is fascinating stuff. We're going to get right back to it. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Super Beets Soft Chews. You guys are missing out if you haven't tried this. Super Beets Soft Chews, it's like eating Skittles, but with all the health benefits that you won't get from candy. It's amazing. It has a great taste. Super Beets Soft Chews combines non-GMO beets with a powerful new ingredient. It's called grape seed extract, and it's absolutely delicious. It's used in the Super Beets Soft Chews, and it's been clinically shown to be 2 times as effective. Listen to this. 2 times as effective as supporting normal blood pressure as healthy lifestyle alone. So it just helps you out all the way around. Now you can take just 2 delicious chews a day, anytime, anywhere, to get the blood pressure support you need and the energy you want. Trust me, this holiday season, when you buy a bag of Super Beets Soft Chews, you can get a second for 50% off, plus free shipping when you make your purchase at getsuperbeets.com/Carter. Remember this, getsuperbeets.com/Carter. Okay, now let's get back to this, Roger. What can be done about this? I mean, have you talked to your attorneys about this? Is there anything that they can do with regard to the fact that, because really it became a world spectacle that they had CNN there, that they were sending a message, obviously, to the rest of anybody who was in Trump's inner circle, that if you were in Trump's inner circle, this could possibly happen to you, right? I mean, they were bringing everybody in.
Again, I was specifically prohibited from raising the entire question of my arrest or the manner of my arrest or who ordered my arrest at trial. I was never allowed to raise that question. I was also prohibited based on a government motion approved by the judge, ordered by the judge, that I could not raise the question of misconduct by the FBI, the DOJ, the Office of Special Counsel, or any member of Congress. Unconstitutional under Kyles v. Whitley, but tying your hands behind your back. I was not allowed to prove, which I could still do, that there is no evidence that the Russians hacked the DNC, that claim by John Brennan is flawed. It was based on CrowdStrikes, but the CrowdStrikes documents that were declassified thanks to the heroic efforts of Rick Grenell show that even CrowdStrikes no longer makes that claim. They have backed off their claim.
Yes, but Roger, anybody who questions the narrative of the mainstream media outlets or these major media outlets gets dragged through the mud, gets destroyed, gets called a conspiracy theorist. Look at what's happening right now, even with the election. And we've seen that on social media. We've seen the president try to fight back, even with, saying that Section 230 should be revoked, which is basically, for all of you out there that don't know about this, but basically Section 230 kind of covers these social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Google, and others from being sued for information being put on their sites. But because they act like publishers, people are asking to revoke it, particularly Brendan Carr with the FCC and others, because they're not only acting like publishers, they're also controlling the narrative. This was part of the problem you were having, Roger, with trying to get the information out on your side of the story. It's the same problem that Lieutenant General Michael Flynn has had. It's the same problem that President Trump has had. And it's even a bigger, potentially huge problem for the Republic, for our country, because we don't know the truth anymore. So many Americans are so frustrated, they don't even know who to believe.
No, look, I think you've hit it right on the head. First of all, I was banned on Twitter. I had 550,000 followers. This was after the success of the Netflix film Get Me, Roger Stone. Then, and I was a pioneer. I was banned long before you. I must have posted something that hurt Jake Tapper's feelings. In any event, But on the day that the president commuted my sentence, I was banned for life on both Facebook and Instagram, because Facebook owns Instagram, based on a false contention contained in a substantial report put together by some left-wing research firm funded by George Soros that claimed falsely many things, but among them that I owned 100 fake Facebook profiles, which I don't. In fact, I don't even own one, and I never have. It's false. Now, I'll get around to suing them at some point. Suing Facebook and Instagram, given their deep pockets and the politicization of our judiciary, is probably a fool's errand. But yes, this is much tougher to fight because I have Andrew Weissmann, who knows that he has no evidence of crime, who was writing for the New York Times, Stone must be prosecuted as soon as Biden is president. We have Neil Cattell, the former acting solicitor of the United States, Solicitor General, who writes for The Atlantic. Roger Stone can be tried again because he no doubt destroyed evidence in his case. We better look at your colleague Weissmann, number one. But number two, there's never any evidence that I destroyed anything. The Mueller never found any such thing. So the bloodlust for Roger Stone goes unabated, which is why I must tell you, as I told Real Clear Politics a week ago, yes, I hope the president will consider a full pardon for me.
Obviously, we don't know what the president will decide and make his own decision, but you brought up so many points that I think the American public really connects with. And one that I think is really terrifying is the fact that our law enforcement agencies and our intelligence apparatus was weaponized against a sitting president and weaponized against those that were closest to him. And I think we know that now for a fact, and we have the evidence to prove it. Thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. I mean, that's pretty intense thoughts there, because I wonder that sometimes too. I've talked to you guys about personal situations, friends that we no longer speak to each other. I don't know why. I want to talk to them. I don't know why they won't, that our nation's so divided that now even people in the same family can't even talk to one another. Something's got to change here. Something's got to give. Either we got to find a way to meet somewhere in the middle. We've got to figure something out, or are we too far apart? What's it going to take to turn this around? I don't know. I really don't. But I don't want to end on a low note. And I don't think that's a low note. I think it's just something we need to think about. I know a way we can change everything, though. I know you guys are out there just like right on pins and needles. What is it, Sara? What is the way that we can change everything? What is the way that is going to unite our country, unite our world, change everything, change the way we view everything? Well, it may be the Galactic Federation. I'm serious. This is the coolest story to come out anywhere this month, maybe in the whole year. This is the coolest story. I'm telling you. A former Israeli space security chief says extraterrestrials exist and President Trump knows about it. Now, I tried to verify whether or not President Trump knows about this Galactic Federation. By the way, this Israeli space security chief says that there is a base on Mars. It's underground. That's why we can't see it. It's not like they're flying around Mars all the time, but there is a base on Mars, and that Israel knows about it and the United States knows about it. Now, I contacted somebody. I've got sources. I said, is this for real? What is going on here? And they said, look, there may be some truth to what is being said here, some truth. But my source does not believe that President Trump, and in fact said that they contacted people. President Trump was never really briefed on this at all, but that possibly other presidents have been briefed on this possibility. Now, this former Israeli space security chief, apparently he sent eyebrows raising, and people were very stressed when he spoke publicly about this. But he said unidentified flying objects have asked, the unidentified flying objects have asked not to publish that they are here. Humanity is not ready, he said. And this was in an Israeli paper. and he was interviewed in Hebrew. It ran this past week. He did say that he had been waiting to discuss this because had he talked about this even 5 years ago, people would have sent him to the funny farm. He says he is of sound mind and body, that he knows what he's talking about. This is his story. He's sticking to it. We have, according to the former Israeli security space chief or space security chief, let me get this right, there is Martians, and I'm telling you, if they show up here, we are all going to be friends again, right? It's going to be like, Independence Day. We're not going to see Democrat, Republican. We're not going to know. We're just going to be like, oh my gosh, there is a giant spaceship over our city in Washington, D.C. What are we going to do about it? We're not even going to care. So maybe that gives you some solace. It gives me a little. I'm hoping that they'll show up soon before we all lose our minds. Anyways, thanks so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. I hope the end of this podcast lifted you up. Please come back again. This is the Sara Carter Show. I'm coming to you from Radio America. Remember, if you love the podcast, give us a review. We like those 5-star ratings. We love those reviews. We read them all the time. Whether you're on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcast, we get those reviews. Again, thank you so much for being a part of the show. And here at the Sara Carter Show, we are taking the story back. Today, I'm joined by Rebecca Weber, the CEO of the Association for Mature American Citizens. It's also known as AMAC. Can you share a little bit with the audience about your father, Dan Weber, and how he founded AMAC and why?
My father formed AMAC after he recognized that the AARP really was not representing his values, and those values were really faith, family, and freedom. And my father believed in America's greatness. He believed that there was what he described as a cultural shift occurring in our country. He thought that the very, very foundation, the Constitution, was being disregarded. And we saw that the power of government was growing and individual freedoms were diminishing, were being threatened. And to get more specific was in 2006 when he said to me that he was canceling his AARP membership. And I said to my father, why would you do that? And he said, well, they've just named Harry Belafonte Man of the Year. And he went on to say that Harry Belafonte had commented to Hugo Chavez saying that George W. Bush was the greatest terrorist threat in America. And my father said something is wrong with that. So he saw the AARP make this sharp left turn. And that was when he said, let's form AMAC. And I said, let's do it.
Rebecca, thanks so much for being with me today. I'm honored to have you and AMAC as a sponsor for the Sara Carter Show. For more information, folks, visit amac.us/Carter.